Welcome to the Limitless Leaders Podcast. This is a show where my guests and I explore and expand on all things mindset, leadership, and communication. On the show, I interview inspiring leaders, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all walks of life, where they share their stories, experiences, and lessons. This is a podcast for you if you're looking to learn, grow, and accelerate your life, career, and who you are. Hi, and welcome to the Limitless Leaders Podcast. Thanks for tuning in and watching from wherever you are in the world. Today, I'm super excited to introduce you to an amazing thought leader and friend, Jenny Stilwell. Welcome, Jenny.
Hi, Renee. Thank you so much. Looking forward to chatting to you.
Yeah, I cannot wait. And, I just want the audience to know a little bit about you. So Jenny is a strategy advisor helping entrepreneurs take control of growth as they upscale from 7 to 8 figures by putting in place the right strategy, management tools, and structure. Her philosophy is that your business should be an enabler of a better life, rather than something that tethers you to it. She loves supporting small business CEOs who are navigating the challenges of growth to take back control of their business and their life and get out of the overwhelm to move ahead. Throughout Jenny's career, she has had several CEO roles and has established 3 of her own consultancies in the last 30 years. She must have started when she was 1. This has enabled her to fully understand her clients and what they're dealing with as they grow their companies into a more valuable entity. Jenny's also the author of Small Business CEO and the 7% Club, how to be one of the 7% businesses that make beyond $2 million in turnover. Love this book, have personally read this book. So Jenny, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I know we've gone back and forth a bit this year and from my end, and it's good to have you here. I'd love you just to share a little bit about, your story and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I think I started in a fairly traditional way. I started corporate role straight out of uni, which was funny, the role I had, because it was in computers and IT, and I knew absolutely nothing about technology or computers, which was challenging in itself. But I did that, and I started out sort of in sales, and then I went into the marketing stream, and then that kind of set me off on the sales and marketing path. So I guess it was fairly traditional in that I just, grew and grew until I took on general management roles. And then there was a recession in the early 90s, and I didn't like the role I had, and there was nothing else in the market at the time. So I thought, well, why don't I start a marketing consultancy, as you do? I had no clients. I'd never run a business before. But anyway, I did that for 5 years, and it was pretty successful. But I hadn't quite finished my corporate career, so I went back and ended up as CEO of a software company. It was a public company, so I ran that. And then after that, which was a really interesting learning curve, I started my own advisory business, and I started working with clients who were going through the same sort of challenges with, multi-million-dollar companies. And so I guess in the last 20 years, I've had a few CEO roles, but I've also had businesses focused on helping my clients to navigate those challenges. So, I've had my own businesses. I've led other companies. So I kind of get it from both angles, which is why I like working with the clients I've got.
Amazing. And, in your book, you talk about all the strategies, and I love your book because there's, it's a guidebook, so you can work through it. As businesses approach the $2 million turnover mark, what what are the obstacles that stop most businesses reaching that? I'd love to, yeah, love you to talk about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting because when I was writing the book, which it was originally just about strategy, I was doing some research and I found this statistic that only 7% of businesses make it beyond 2 million in turnover. And I didn't believe it. It seemed like such a small percentage. And I looked at what happened in the UK and the US, and the numbers are a little bit different but comparable.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, well, what is it that makes going beyond 2 million too hard or
Mm,
not desirable? And so there's, putting it in a proper context, there's a lot of people that don't want to be that big. They can have a really lovely lifestyle business way smaller than that.
yeah.
A lot of people have created a job more than a business and they're happy with that. So there's a lot of reasons why people don't want risk, all sorts of things. But as a business goes from, say, high six figures into the $1 million mark, that's where it really becomes challenging. And this is what I've seen, particularly with all the clients I've worked with over the years. It's a real shift they have to make from being a business owner to a CEO.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what got them to that point is, perseverance and just pushing forward and, keeping going and getting the clients themselves and basically having a finger in everything in the business. But at some point, you cannot continue to do that.
It's not
And
sustainable. Like
no,
it,
it's not
yeah.
sustainable and it's not enjoyable. That's where you start to get really stressed and overwhelmed. And so, particularly with a product-based business, all this added complexity comes in with, warehousing and
Yeah.
distribution, logistics and
Yeah.
freight and all of that.
Mm.
So, um, these are the sorts of challenges that start to really become too much for people and too overwhelming. And I think a lot of people think they can continue on regardless. And of course, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or they kind of retreat,
Mm.
um, or they just make the decision that I'm big enough where I am. I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
Or they refuse to, not refuse, but they don't fully understand, is probably more accurate. They don't fully understand why these shifts are so important. And so they don't try and make that shift that's going to get them beyond there.
Wow. And I think too, to your point, there's a lot of different reasons why people approach that and repel it or don't know what to do. I think I know in my network, there's a lot of people that run more of a practice model like me, where I'm the face of the business. I have some contractors, but I'm not a fully fledged business. I'm a practice. And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people out there that have gone to a business model and then it's now what? And that's where I think your book, has a great place to contribute to the strategy of how to get there. Yeah.
Mm. Thank you. And I tried to write it that way because, there's a lot of books you pick up and they're telling you what the situation is, but you don't necessarily get the how.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
tried to make that book about the how. This
Yeah.
is
No,
how
I
to
love
do
it.
it.
I love it. There's a lot of why books out there, which is great, but the how books are more practical. And I'm looking actually to read your book again over the Christmas break. So I'd love to ask you, for our listeners out there, and we have business owners, leaders, corporates, really mixed. If someone's out there right now and they're heading towards a 1 million or even $2 million business, there's some great models in your book. Is there one that stands out that you could sort of just talk through briefly, or some tips?
Yeah, look, I think the most important part is the stage I refer to in the book called simplifying structure.
Yeah,
And that's where you've really got to get your head around what's happening in the business. And the most important thing to start with, I always start with the numbers,
yeah,
always,
yeah,
because they tell a story. They just tell you what's happening. You know, what's selling, what's not selling, what's profitable, what's not profitable, where is the margin? Have you got too many people? Have you got not enough? So they tell the story. So I always start with that. And a lot of people resist that.
Yeah.
And I understand why, you know, they've never really had to go down that path before. But
And
it's
it's
such,
confrontational when you're in your own business too, because it's quite personal, isn't it?
absolutely, you're quite right. And you know, you don't want people to feel that they're not capable or they're doing the wrong thing. It's just a hurdle they have to get over.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, it's got to be done. So I always start with the numbers. But the next thing, and sometimes this comes first, is looking at the people and the resourcing and an exercise. It's in the book, but I go through it with clients who are in that stage of overwhelm. Okay, let's look at all the functions that need to be done in your business.
Yeah.
You know, all the marketing stuff and, you know, any account stuff, the client liaison and management, you know, all those sorts of things, and look at who's doing it and is there a gap?
Yeah.
And, you know, invariably you have the owner of the business going, well, I do this and this and this. And they might have a few people who support them, but they put their name front and center for everything. So it's a transitional process. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
But first of all is to fill that thing in and visibly show them, look at how much you are doing, look at what's not getting done. And the irony is that on that list, there's a list of what I call CEO responsibilities. And they're the only responsibilities that the business owner never gets to because
And
they're
they're the
doing
most
all this thing.
important because they're too operational most of the time. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's a really important step. Another one is what I call the gating process. So, you know, whether you make widgets or you you know, deliver a service to a client or whatever it might be, what what happens when you're reaching that point of that tipping point is that the owner of the company has everything in their head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whole
The
in
knowledge
process,
thing. Yep. Yep.
absolutely, which is understandable, but it's also a big bottleneck because they bring other people into the business who don't necessarily know. They've missed step 7 and 8. They only know 3 and 4.
Yep.
So getting that whole end-to-end process out and mapping that is so important because new people come in and they go, oh, okay, I get how things work here. I understand the DNA of the company. I understand what my role is. And it's that combination of mapping out the core processes, not everything, but the core processes,
Yep.
and understanding the numbers. They're the vital parts that enable the owner of the company to start to release a little bit of control and start to make those little shifts
Yeah.
toward what they should be doing.
Mm.
And you know, you put the numbers into a dashboard so they can look regularly at how they're tracking it. You know, simple things, but until it's set up, it's not simple. Once it's set up, it is. And then they start to think about, well, if I had someone to do this, I wouldn't need to do it, but I'd have more time to do this.
Mm.
And then they can start to move back into their joy. You know,
Yeah.
and their joy could be that they're the creative
Yeah.
driver of the business or whatever it might be. And that's what I love seeing with clients, to see them shift from that overwhelmed, I'm not happy in my business anymore. I don't want to let it go, but I'm really not happy, to
Yeah.
over a period of time start to get excited about it again.
Yeah.
So they're the kind of the key things I start with, the people, the profit or the numbers,
Yeah.
and the process. You know, they're all really important.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And I think it goes back to, I always say we've become human doings, not human beings. So we get so caught up, and I'm guilty of it, in doing what you love, but sometimes just actually taking stock and going, something you said, I think people will really resonate with what is profitable. You know, I get so many people, even clients of mine, that say we've sold this amount of, whatever widget, and I'll say, what's the profitability? And it's half of something else. So
Exactly.
getting prioritizing your service or your product so you're getting the most out of it. So mindset and self-leadership would have a lot to do with this, wouldn't it? Actually accepting this is where I'm at, this is where I want to go, and this is what I need to start thinking and doing.
Absolutely. And I kind of distill that down to what I call intentional growth.
Yeah.
Because look, maybe I'm, you know, maybe I've been through enough peaks and troughs and a lot of troughs to get to the point now where I say, um, growth for growth's sake is not a good thing. Like, how is your business going to enable you to have a better life? Well, number one, you can't be tied to it every day. So we've got to fix that. Number two, it's got to make enough to enable you to, give your kids a good education or give you time out for holidays or whatever it might be, or just some financial freedom.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I think that's a really important consideration. And sometimes I see people just wanting to grow and grow and grow. So I had this is a classic example. I had a client years ago who was intent on hitting 1 million turnover, absolutely intent. And that was the point at which I was brought in to do a strategy for the next few years. And the growth targets that had been set for that team were absolutely they weren't achievable. She didn't want to put anyone else on in the business. The team were completely overworked and overwrought, but she just wanted growth. And from what I could see from kind of the outside looking in, I don't think it was giving her a better life. Uh,
No.
she seemed incredibly stressed and anxious. Um, and and the targets that she set, when I look back over sort of the last 2 to 3 years, she'd been having huge increases in growth.
Yeah.
But what was happening was they started with, say, I don't know, let's say 50 clients, and then they tripled the business, but they had so many more clients. So instead of having high value, high margin
I
clients that
have
were
a lot.
manageable, they had so many clients that were a third or a quarter of the size, not profitable. Her team were just ready to collapse.
Yeah.
And that is growth for growth's sake.
Yeah.
And
I like
I,
that.
I just, if anyone, I stopped working with her after that, um, and needless to say that it wasn't sustainable, and there was a silent partner who came in and basically took over. But I think if people are more intentional about their growth, it can be more manageable
Yeah.
and more profitable
And
and
for
more.
the right reason. Like you're right. It's like goals. Some people will be chasing something, and I had a client recently, and I'm like, do you still want that? And they're like, not really, but I've worked on it for so long, I might as well keep going instead of changing trajectory or looking at achieving something else. I love that. Make sure it's, yeah, not growth for growth's sake. Like actually make sure you're doing it for the end outcome you want.
I
Yeah.
think I think we're probably all guilty of this.
Mm.
Uh, being able to let go. So it was funny. I did a keynote talk in New Zealand recently, and I was talking about this concept of where is the margin, where is the profit,
Yeah.
and growing your business off that tier of clients, and and letting the others go, and instead of trying to do all of them, just focus on who are the most profitable clients that we really enjoy working with,
Yeah.
and let's grow more of those. And someone in the audience asked me, and she said, look, with all those clients that aren't profitable, that lower, few tiers of clients, what do you recommend we do with them? Should I refer them to someone else, or should we sort of sell that part off, or, should we just put someone else on? And I said, I find it really remarkable, and I did make a joke of it, that when I suggest this, people are so concerned about letting go of something that's not good for their business and ultimately not good for them,
Yeah.
rather than being so concerned about what is good for the business and what is good for them. And it's just to run the wrong way. And we all do it, but we've got to stop doing it.
Yeah, it's so true though. It's like I do a lot of work on change and or going through a crisis. We always tend to focus on what we don't have opposed to what we do. And it's the same as what you're saying. It's the human condition that I think it's default and we
Yeah.
need to take a step back. I'd love to ask you, Jenny, we do a lot of work around leadership and I think everyone's a leader because we're all leaders of self. Who's a leader that you admire and why? They don't have to be famous. They could be a school teacher.
Yeah. Look, I go back to leaders I've worked with,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that has the most meaning to me. And one of my early mentors was the most amazing leader in terms of how he engaged everybody.
Mm.
He seemed to be able to just tap into each of us and find that little switch and turn it on, with a team that was as varied as,
Mm.
anything. And, he was extremely good at that, and fostering that and developing talent.
Yeah.
Um, and I think leaders who are, real and genuine, like
Yeah.
you respect them. You respect them. That's
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah.
But you can have a human conversation with them
Yeah. I love that.
about your work, your career, your personal life. It's
Mhm.
impacting things, and you feel that that trust is kept. I think those sorts of qualities are really important,
Yeah.
particularly now.
More so than ever. I always talk about heart leadership, and leading with, connection and, mentally, emotionally, the whole realm and unlearning and relearning. And I think in this digital world, leaders now need to ramp up EQ more than, with all this AI and overuse of technology. Are you finding that, in the businesses you deal with, that there's a real need for that human touch, that human connection?
Yeah, I'm finding that my clients
Mm.
um, are of the same mindset.
Yeah.
I had a call with a client just before, and we were talking about AI and just how it could be used in their business and the advantages for the business and for clients and efficiency, but also in terms of forecasting out, their team and their resourcing requirements.
Yeah.
But we were also saying, reiterating the statement that it's not someone, it's what was it? It's not AI that's going to replace you. It's someone using AI that
That's
would.
right.
So
That's
if you
right.
use it as a tool,
Yeah.
but we all want the human connection. We want to be able
Yeah.
to talk to someone and see someone and meet someone.
I've seen a few smaller businesses like, some suppliers we deal with, humans actually answer the phone and they're based in Australia. And it's sad, isn't it, that I actually get really excited about that when it used to be the normal. I sort of have a saying, it's heartbeats over bot beats.
Oh, absolutely. I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. And just as a case in point, it's a bit of a segue, but um, I have just recently come back from the UK, and before I went, I decided to have a lunch over there. I thought I'm going to host a
Oh,
lunch.
good idea. Yeah.
I looked at my LinkedIn connections and people who I have had more communication with, maybe a few Zoom calls,
Yeah.
some a little bit more so. And I thought, all right, we're all connected on LinkedIn, which is a great tool. Let's get everyone together. So
Yeah.
I put the invitation out while I was doing it. I let everyone see who else was invited, and everyone on the list knew at least one other person,
Yeah.
at
Which is
least.
important to some people. Yeah.
Absolutely. So they're walking into a room and they know that there's going to be at least one or more people that they know. Booked a really cute little French restaurant in Covent Garden.
Nice.
And I can't tell you what a great day it was. And even when I sent the invitation out, I got responses straight away because we all want to meet in person. We want to talk to someone in
Yeah.
person.
Totally, I get it. Well
Yeah.
done for doing that. I think I'm the same when I travel. Not I haven't traveled a lot this year, but I always try and have something or a lunch or a dinner,
Yeah.
bring people together, and it's going back to the basics
Yeah, I think so.
that I think's important. And, spending time, even if you're in a small or medium business, spending time with your people. I'm a big advocate for coaching, obviously, but just having that one-on-one time, even if it's shooting the breeze or, something I've brought in Jenny to a few companies as stay interviews. I brought them in about 6 years ago, where you actually catch up with your staff and go, why are you here? What's keeping you here?
Yeah.
What do you love? What don't you love? And the feedback has been amazing. So there's the people that go, I love it. And there's people, the high performers that go, I was actually thinking of leaving because no one ever asked for my opinion. So don't
And
underestimate that
yeah,
one-on-one heart connection. Jenny, I'm a big believer in a concept which I know you're aware of, the gift mindset. So seeing the gifts in challenging situations and people and positive. What are one or two gifts or lessons you've learnt in your career so far that you use to progress yourself forward and our listeners could actually learn something from in their business or their role?
hmm, it's an interesting question.
Mm,
Oh, look, there have been so many. There have been, really challenging people
yeah.
issues over the years. Um, and I guess we all learn you've just got to act with humanity. There have been situations where you have to follow a legal path if there's something that's really not right.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel right. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel human. It doesn't feel right. And you do it at the time because you've been advised and you're looking after the company.
Yeah.
But from a personal perspective, you just think that was bloody awful.
Mm,
And and so I guess on reflection, you just think that we're all people,
yeah.
and you've got to do what's true
Right.
to you. Um,
Something you said earlier was around trusting your instincts. You said
yeah,
in that.
yeah. Well, I think that's huge. I mean, you've got to back yourself,
Mm,
and that's having confidence, which I think most people grow into that.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but once you are at that point, you really do need to just trust your instincts, trust what you're capable of. I mean, my nephew, for example, he recently, he was in a role for I think 3 years, and the culture was
Mm,
absolutely toxic from the top down. It was
awful.
terrible,
Yeah.
and all the new people that came in, they didn't stay for very long.
Mm,
He got to a point where I had got to once in my career, driving to work, he had a knot in his stomach. That horrible, horrible feeling. You almost feel like you're going to be sick going to work. And I had I had many chats with him, but he said to me the other night that Easter was the best I've ever had because we had this big long conversation over Easter. I said, you have to trust yourself.
yeah. Trust
Know
your,
that this
yeah.
Trust your instincts. This is not the right place to be for, and all the reasons why you shouldn't be there. yeah, you haven't got another job to go into right now.
Mm.
Trust,
Yeah.
trust what your body's telling you.
Yeah.
Trust that, you are capable
Mm.
and marketable, and just make the step that's going to make you happier. And he did, and you know, everything's panned out, and the end of the year will be so much better than before Easter. And I
Amazing.
think, we've just got to trust our instincts. Now, what other people say about, oh, but what if you do this and what if you do that? And
Oh, yeah.
no, trust yourself. So
Yeah. I'm a big believer in that. I think, this year, from a health perspective, my diagnosis came from intuition and instinct.
yeah.
I've always known that, but it's reinforced that, and I wrote a thing the other day around culture is how your team feel in their heads and feel in their stomachs and hearts on a Sunday night about Monday.
Yes, I read that post and I agree with you entirely. That Sunday night, looking
Sunday
for
night
work, feeling
dreads, I
sick.
call it.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I know so many friends I see on a Sunday night that go, oh, I've got work tomorrow. And, not gloating, but I love, and you're the same. We've created what we do, right?
yes,
So
yes.
a lot of hard work. It's not luck. But, I think really checking in on that and knowing anything that comes to you, even if it's an obstacle, it's come to you because you're ready for it. And I think if we ignore it, it'll keep coming until you learn from it. I really, really believe that.
I agree with you
Um,
too.
yeah, you gave given me a few little quotes that I love. Cash is king, but margin is queen. There are businesses with cash flow problems because they aren't paying attention to the margin. We talked
I'll
about.
bang on about margin forever. Sales are great, revenue is great,
Yeah.
but the margin
It
is the important thing.
it is, and tracking it and having a way, especially in a service business. I know I struggled with it early on. It was like we're selling all these workshops, but take out time, resources, even all the time you've learnt your IP over the years. What is the cost of that? And I think it's, if anyone's listening, it's knowing how to measure that margin.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's often new
Yeah.
to some of the clients I work with, because
Yeah.
they look at the sales and they look at the bottom line.
Mm.
But the margin can be different for different product, for different
Yeah.
service streams, but also for different clients.
Yeah, that's
It's worth doing a bit of a sanity check on that, maybe once or twice a year. And, sometimes the biggest clients in terms of sales are actually costing the business money. So,
right. And I think you'd see this more than me, but in a services business, sometimes if you're working, it's the 80/20 rule, but if you're working with some big clients that you're doing a lot of different services in, they become what I call bundled. And if you look at them separately, they're not profitable. I think
yeah,
that's something I had to look at a few years ago.
yeah, really good point. Absolutely.
Mm.
Mm.
The other quote I love is having an A team can change your business and your life. Don't settle for B and C players. I'm all about having the right team, the right skill set, leveraging diversity of skill. Have you got any tips on that for people that might be going, oh, I need to review my team?
Absolutely. And I really mean that. And it's right. You've got the right team. It changes, it'll certainly change your business. And if
Yeah,
it's changing your business in a good way, it can change your life.
yeah,
So I think you've got to, again, the word intentional comes up. Don't just, you know, recruit someone to fill a gap or throw resources at problems. You've got to, and it goes back to the process, have a look at what needs to be done in the business, first of all. So, can it be done by one person instead of the three that are currently doing bits of it?
yeah.
And once you're clear on that, then be really clear about what sort of resource you need. What experience do they need? What skill sets would be really useful? What attributes or characteristics do they need to be part of the culture?
Mm,
And then intentionally recruit against that. Then once you've
yeah.
got them, I think we forget the A players because we focus more on, getting the Bs along and
That's
helping,
right.
because they're the bulk of your company.
Nurture them. You've got to
Yeah.
nurture them. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and the C's are typically the problem people, but we kind of forget the A's
Yeah.
because they're just doing a great job and they're fabulous. But we have to look after them.
Well, they leave. We see it a lot in a
Yeah.
triangle sort of pyramid matrix.
Yeah.
The bottom 10% get a lot of attention.
Yes.
Middle 60 is where they say spend the majority of your time, but get that top 20 or 30% to
Yeah.
help you with that because
Absolutely.
I always think, Jenny, back to my corporate days, 12 years I was with a, global company. And in some of the sales roles, I was always the top performer and I got different targets than others. And that was great. But I remember one day sitting there thinking, I don't even really get any recognition for doing that extra work
Yeah.
and that's when I remember speaking to my manager saying, I love training people. I love coaching. Where I worked, I had a coach at 23 and I was taught to coach professionally at 25. So that's like
Yeah.
27 years ago. And I remember he said, oh, okay, if you're interested in that, well, you can start running some of our university that we run. And that one question, I still think if I hadn't asked, not saying it's a bad thing, but I'd probably still be there because it opened up my love of
Yes.
coaching. And I just think it's really, really important. If, Jenny, if people sitting, listening to this in their car or watching this, if you just had two really quick little things they could do, little strategies they could do to really make sure they're heading in the right direction, apart from getting your book because it's all in there, what would you suggest?
I would suggest number one, really understand your client base or your customer base.
Yeah,
That's absolutely crucial because it touches on many of the things that we've talked about, who's making you money, who's not, where are the opportunities, and, not just the financial side of your customer base, but where the opportunities are
yeah,
and, where you need to focus. And I find it amazing that companies don't do it. They just take their customer base for granted, even huge corporates.
yeah.
It's all about more, more, more. It's not necessarily about more of the right ones.
Mm.
So very much I would pay attention to the customer base. And I think in terms of, if I'm only giving two strategies or two tips, the second one would be to create a dashboard. And it could be a spreadsheet, but there's things in your business that produce outcomes, so marketing things we all talk about, like lead conversion, all that kind of thing. But the outcomes are number of clients and,
Yeah,
all that sort of thing. So you need to understand what is driving the outcomes that you want, and they're the important activities.
yeah,
But then also know what you need to be tracking. So we've said, sales is great, revenue growth is great, but margin is important too. And just understand, every business is different and it doesn't need to be a whole lot of numbers, but you've got to understand, the need to know numbers in your business. And
yeah,
even if you don't want to do it or you've never done it before, get help from, someone, an accountant, a bookkeeper, a fellow entrepreneur, get help from someone or read the book.
yeah.
Because that's really important because that's going to help you feel a lot more in control of your business and have control without being controlling.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because I'm very open. I hate numbers. I was the kid that stood up in year 8 in maths and said, "Why are we learning this? We're never going to use this." I was that person. I loved English and I loved drama and all that. But you do, and I've learned as a business owner, you have to know your numbers and your profit, or like your NSV. Jenny, we could talk all day. I'd love just to share where can people get your books, The 7% Club, How to Be One of the 7% of Businesses That Make It Beyond $2 million in turnover.
It's on Amazon. It's in Dimmicks bookstores. You can get it from my website.
Yep,
And my website is Jenny Stilwell, one L in the middle, two on the end, .com.au. And
awesome.
um, yeah.
And we'll put this in the show notes. Have you got anything? I think you mentioned something about a retreat mid-year 2025
Yep, we do an annual retreat,
for
and the
business
next
owners,
one
for business owners.
for
Yeah,
business owners. Yep, and the next one is in July, and there's information on that on the website. And yeah, it's a great opportunity to get together with other business owners. It's not a big group,
yeah.
um, but it's great to have time out to work on your business. And we try and do it in really nice locations.
Yeah. Do you know where you're doing it next year?
Yeah, we'll be in the Whitsundays.
Oh, beautiful. Might have to have a look at that. So we'll have all your details in the show notes. Before we finish up, we've got some quick trivia. What is your favorite word?
Oh, my favorite word. I have many. I have many. One would have to be discombobulated.
One of my favorites. I
Yes,
laugh
really.
when I
I
saw
love the way
that.
it sounds because the way it sounds is kind of what
But
it
it
is.
is. Yes, I love it. I love it. I learned that word in COVID. I remember I did a video going, I feel discombobulated and I'm languishing. And I looked back at it the other day. It came up as a memory. I'm like, what?
I love it. I love it.
Such a good word. You're right. The actual meaning of the word is in the way you say it.
Hmm.
What sound or noise do you love?
Oh, the sound of the water lapping the sand. I'm a beach girl and I love it. It's calming and I love it.
Again, very similar. Yeah, nothing like it. I say getting your vitamin C, SEA. Um, if you had one last meal, what would it be? You know, I'm all about food.
Well, I know you're all about food and I love cooking as well, but I have to say, if I only had one last meal left, I think I'd have a glass of wine.
Yeah, or a bottle. I love
Bottle,
it.
absolutely.
I love it. And you've done so much in your life and you continue to do so, but what profession other than your own would you like to attempt if you could?
Well, look, the inner unchained Jenny would love to be just one hell of a rock chick, with big hair and
I
a
can use that.
microphone and a big voice. But that will never, ever happen. I cannot sing a note. I cannot play music.
We'll have to have
It'll,
a karaoke night.
oh God, not even that. No.
Oh, I'd love it. I could see you, yeah, rocking the leather pants and oh, Jenny, thank you so much for being on the show. Like it's just been awesome and I've learnt so much just chatting to you and I've also read your book. So we'll have all your details in the show notes for our listeners and viewers. So thank you.
Renee. It's been great talking to you. Great to see you.
Yeah, pleasure. It's been awesome catching up. And thank you for anyone who's been watching or listening. As always, we love your feedback. Any topics or guests that you'd like to have on the show, let us know. Please keep a look at reneegiarrusso.com events. We've got some great events coming up for 2025 that are one-day public workshops that we also run in your business, but these are public. We've got a leadership one, what lights you up? So learn about what energizes you and how to bring that into your role. And in April, we've got Ramp Up EQ in a World of AI, where you'll actually understand where you sit in emotional intelligence and what you can do. So keep an eye out for those. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to you tuning in to our next episode. Thank you for listening to the Limitless Leaders podcast. So you don't miss an episode, make sure you follow the show in your favorite podcast app. Feel free to share this podcast with your family, friends, and work colleagues. If you're enjoying the show, find out more on what we do at RG Dynamics at www.reneegiarrusso.com. Until next time, Be limitless.